Welcome to another episode of Automotive Insiders. I'm your host, Jason Stein. Great to have you back with us again. The modern vehicle is no longer just a machine, it's a platform powered by software, driven by data, and increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence. Today's vehicle generates thousands of data points on every trip, from driver behavior to vehicle performance, while supporting everything from over-the-air updates to advanced driver assistance systems. For suppliers, that shift creates a whole new set of challenges. Because if you've historically been focused on hardware, you're now operating in a world where intellectual property, data ownership, and software rights are just as critical as the physical product. How do you protect innovation in a digital automotive ecosystem? Joining me today, Vanessa Miller, partner at Foley Lardner, and Nick Ellis, also from Foley Lardner, to break down the legal and strategic implications of the software-defined vehicle, from IP protection and AI integration to the contracts that will define who owns what in the future. It's all coming up on Automotive Insiders. Well, it's great to have you back on the program. Vanessa Miller, thank you for joining me on Automotive Insiders.
Pleased to be here.
Nick Ellis, welcome back again to you.
Hello again, Jason. Thanks for having us.
So let's talk about the subject that so many suppliers and the industry is really grappling with, is that as vehicles become increasingly software defined, suppliers need to integrate AI and Industry 4.0 technologies, navigating some of those new risks. A lot of things to cover here: intellectual property, data ownership, cybersecurity, liability. With most vehicles on the market today as technological and digital as they are anything else, it's changing the way that you've got to approach your own clients and suppliers in the marketplace. Vanessa, what's your overview of what suppliers should be thinking about?
Yeah, so cars used to be defined by horsepower, and now we talk about software power.
Right.
It's really, it runs across everything from the legal and commercial issues that suppliers have to manage, and it changes the entire driving experience of the vehicle. It's really a computer on wheels.
Given that, Nick, the many other things to think about here: advanced systems for entertainment, navigation, communications. What are you most concerned about?
Well, and it's almost become cliche to say it now, but even years ago, we were talking about how automobiles have so much more computing power than the space shuttle that was I suppose it was no longer operating at that time, but um, the level of sophistication that's in these vehicles now, and all of those systems need to be able to interact, and they need to be able to work together. And it's a different environment and a different set of challenges that a lot of automotive suppliers have not traditionally dealt with. Most automotive suppliers are usually more focused on hardware, at least, historically. And to be able to now integrate all of the software that's going into those components, make sure that it all works together and you're not creating a new set of issues. It's just a challenge that a lot of them have not dealt with, at least not over the course, at least not historically. Many of them are now getting up to speed on it. Many of them are very good at it. I don't want to suggest otherwise, but it is different than a lot of the legacy automotive suppliers have dealt with historically, and presents just a new set of challenges.
Vanessa, intellectual property comes into play at a huge level here. How do you advise your clients on that?
Yes, we have to understand who's bringing what to the table with respect to the supplier and the customer. Thinking about the IP ownership, the data rights and access, who's going to own the data that is coming out of all of the software and possibly the AI that's going to be in the vehicles, who's responsible for updating that, and what those restrictions are on it, as well as liability, cybersecurity risks, et cetera.
And as it relates to liability, Nick, this has been a gray area for a while. Software technology and data involved in all these vehicles implicate a whole suite of additional contracting and issues that need to be addressed by suppliers. What's your best advice on liability issues?
As much as you can, spell it out in the contract, who is responsible for what aspect of the operation of each piece of equipment, each component, and perhaps most importantly, who's responsible for the integration. Think about it. I have an element of software that is supposed to tell a component to do X, Y, and Z. And if that component then fails in the field, well, is it because something was wrong with the component? Was it because there was something wrong with the software? Or was it because the software wasn't communicating properly or integrated properly with the component? Think about it. I could have a component that individually meets all of its own specifications and requirements, and I could have a piece of software that individually meets all of its own requirements and specifications. But if those two don't talk to each other properly, you're still going to have an issue. So it's that point of interaction and who's responsible for integration. I think that's really the key piece.
Yeah,
Also,
I
Nick,
agree with Nick.
go ahead,
Suppliers
Vanessa.
really need to ask early on, and this needs to be part of the contract. What are we providing? Are we providing hardware, software, data, or all three? Probably all three. Who owns any improvements that we make as we're developing this? Who can use the data and for what purpose can you use it? And then what happens when the software needs to be updated? That's going to be a really critical question. And how long are you responsible for updating it? And who's going to bear the cost of that? As well as how are any risks and responsibilities connected to the software or the AI? How are those going to be allocated?
Yeah, and follow up for both of you actually on the issue of data ownership. It's still an area that has not clearly been defined. Even who owns the customer to some extent. Nick, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that that's something that a lot of the OEMs and a lot of suppliers are starting to get their arms around in terms of putting specific provisions in a lot of their contracts specifying, well, they own the data that comes out of this. Not always, but I think that's the direction that things have been trending, is most buyers want to have as much control over that data as possible.
Vanessa, thoughts on data ownership or ownership in
I
general?
suspect that the automakers will want to own it, but then there's a value associated with that. So that has to be baked in to the product that or the offering that the suppliers are making.
And this is all before we even start talking about autonomous vehicles and the complexities around autonomy and connected mobility. We are marching slowly, perhaps more quickly than we have in the past, towards sorting some of those issues out, right, Nick?
Yes. Well, first I'll just note that I'm still mad that I don't have my flying car, but that's an entirely separate discussion.
Right.
And yes, the technology for autonomous vehicles is continuing to evolve. Some will say too fast, some will say too slow, but the reality is that it is evolving. And that is just an entirely new set of sensors, equipment, software, data that all gets layered on top of even what we were talking about before, just for the infotainment system and operation of the vehicle. And it adds just that extra layer of complexity and all kinds of additional legal issues that come into play that many people are grappling with, and some states are looking at legislation surrounding. But just when there's an accident by an autonomous vehicle, who is responsible? Is it, again, go back to the hardware manufacturer, the software manufacturer, the owner of the vehicle, the manufacturer of the vehicle? There's a lot of different issues that are being worked through there.
All right, a session that will dive deeply into this is on May 13th, excuse me. Industry briefing, market strategy, policy, and innovation outlook. That's where two representatives of Foley will get into all of the details around software-defined vehicles and suppliers integrating AI and Industry 4.0. Thank you to both of you for being on the program. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
And
thank you, Nick. Thanks again to my guests, Nick Ellis and Vanessa Miller from Foley and Lardner. Thank you for listening, and come back to this platform for more interviews throughout the year. I'm your host, Jason Stein. We'll see you again next time.